back to the show. I'm here with Skye Jitani.
Hi, Phil.
And Christian. No, Christian's still not back. She's like on a world tour.
Maybe she's just taking a potion like Jekyll and Hyde and she turns into this.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
Are you a version of Christian Taylor?
A poor man's version. Let's say that.
A poor manly version.
Poor manly version, yes.
Yeah. We're back with Drew Dyck as our stand-in for Christian Taylor. And in honor of the month of December, he wore his Christmas sweater, which doesn't have, it should have snowflakes or reindeer or something.
It could be Christmassy.
It could be way gaudier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it is bright.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
If you're just listening and not watching, you can't see it, but he's got a bright red sweater.
I bet
beautiful.
they can.
And we're very proud. And he chose the Dr. McCoy mug, which is also bright red. So if he holds it in front of himself, it's just...
If I turn it around.
Yeah, then it disappears.
Blends in.
Hold it the other way, and is it just McCoy's head floating in front of you?
Oh, that's better. You're right.
That's pretty good.
And
Okay.
I got the Skyline Chili mug, which is,
Yeah.
a nice
Cincinnati.
from Cincinnati, college days, Miami. Hey, Skyline Chili.
Yahoo. Okay, I got to sing a theme song. Of course, we've run out of characters, except for our friend Anthony, who is an endless bottomless depository of obscure VeggieTales characters. And he said, you haven't done the theme song as young Mr. Nezer. And that kind of frightened me because I can't remember what young Mr. Nezer sounds like. It was in an Easter Carol, and he only appeared in that one show, I think, and I had to do a voice. They said, all right, we've got one scene with a little boy, Mr. Nezer. Can you come up with a voice for him on the spot? And I think I did something that was actually pretty close to Percy P., I think. Which was just, because it's hard. You can't just, there's no, age knob on voices. Usually if you want young boys, you have to use women to do the voices for young boys because of voices.
Like Bart Simpson.
Yeah, etc. Like Junior Asparagus.
Exactly.
Etc. But
I think it was something like this. So it was a little bit nasal and a little bit, youngish. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. So there's no video. I'm young Nezer. Don't you get it? The young Nezer. Hey, it's a podcast. So end it here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. We'll talk to Skye and Drew Dyck too, because Christian's away 1,000 miles from me and you.
where is she? She's in Washington, D.C. right now, isn't she?
I have no idea.
Okay, good.
Something like that.
Way to be your sister's keeper.
Hey, it's a podcast. So let it hear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. Whee!
Okay. Now I think we've done every character. We'll have to start making up new ones. What was that for?
Uh-oh. Who's on?
Who's on first?
It might be me.
It might be you. Okay.
It might be me.
I turned mine off.
Okay, that's okay.
Oh,
The Pope. The Pope, we've got some interesting news.
We have a papa.
The Pope may be sneaking out at night. The Pope is breaking curfew, I guess, is part of the story.
That's what the Swiss Guards are for, isn't it? Why is he sneaking out?
Right. Restrain your Pope. The Pope may be sneaking out at night to give the poor money. He's known to have sent money to struggling pensioners and poverty-stricken immigrants, but Pope Francis may have taken his charity effort one step further, secretly sneaking out of the Vatican at night incognito to distribute alms to the poor.
And how does he dress?
He dresses, I think, as the Green Lantern.
Or is it a bat outfit?
Yeah, we were wondering if he's a Batman Pope, but it's actually much more similar to St. Nicholas.
It is, yeah.
St. Nicholas snuck out at night and gave alms to the poor.
And he put money in people's socks.
Yes, or their shoes, depending on the version of the story. It was either bags of coins or gold balls. Have you heard that version of the story? Yeah.
Right. Which is where the pawn
Which is where the symbol for the pawn, the logo for the pawn shop, which is 3 gold balls, is a symbol of St. Nicholas. Did you know that?
No idea.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Very cool.
is the Pope, are we mixing the Pope and Santa Claus? So basically the Pope is being Santa Claus. Is this the ultimate Christmas mashup?
Is he distributing actual cash?
Alms. It said alms, which is like a short for almond.
It's a little.
He's
it's
giving
a
what is
miniature
it?
almonds.
He's giving the poor almonds.
Alms.
Alms for the poor. Alms for the poor.
Okay.
See, if I was a poor recipient of alms, I might go, I'd prefer cash.
Cash only, please. No
Yeah.
alms.
What am I
No
supposed
alms.
to do with this? Alm.
The Vatican doesn't have its own currency, does it? I've been there, but I don't recall. I'm pretty sure it's
I
just.
don't think they went with the euro.
Is Italy
'cause-
on the euro? Yeah.
Yeah, Italy is on. They were on the.
I mean, they have their own bank, I know, right?
yeah,
Right,
the
right,
Vatican
but-
Bank, which
Their
is
own
filled. It's
currency?
filled with alms and almonds.
Actually, isn't it indulgences?
They got rid of that. They got rid of that. They don't do that anymore.
You're going to alienate all the Catholic listeners.
Yeah. Wow. There is an official office of almsgiving, officially known as Elemissionaria Pontificia. I'm pretty sure I said that right. Which employs 11 people, 11 full-time almsgivers. And last year, the office donated €1 million to around 6,500 people.
I guess it's euros.
Or maybe they're
I
just
guess.
converting
Or they
alms
convert
into
it to
How,
euros.
how did this story come out? Did they uncover the Pope's secret nightlife?
It doesn't say.
I think he's going bar hopping.
Ooh.
Because he used to be, we learned, a bouncer.
A bouncer at a bar in Argentina.
The Pope was a bouncer, so he had a career before he pursued the
It's actually
priesthood.
very appropriate preparation for being the vicar of Christ and holding the keys to the kingdom,
Yes.
right?
There
Why?
you go.
Because he gets to decide who's in and who's out.
Oh, well, that's also appropriate for being Santa Claus. You have a naughty list, you have a nice list.
There you go.
You are the keeper of the lists. So now that he is following in the footsteps of St. Nicholas and becoming Santa Claus, he keeps the list and bounces the naughty into coal.
Do we need to change our tradition so it's Pope Francis who comes down the chimney? And how does he keep those things all white when he goes through a chimney?
He'd fit a lot better.
That's tricky. Well,
He's
it's
much
either,
slimmer than
it's
the-
either
It's true.
Teflon or the Holy Spirit. I'm not sure which.
Right. Well, Holy Spirit's not a lubricant.
No, but, well, spiritually speaking.
And he's a knife. Cuts.
Oh, right. All right. Enough of that. I saw a movie. I saw a movie last week, or maybe it was the week before. Have you seen Frozen?
No.
Do you have children?
Yeah, we might go this weekend.
Do you have children?
I have children, but they're too young for Frozen.
Children? You have a
How young
child
are they?
I have, sorry.
and a
How-
cat.
I have, 2 cats.
2 cats.
Yeah. Do they like Disney films? Do they
don't
like
know.
musicals? Do cats like musicals? Because dogs don't like musicals.
Cats are hard to impress, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. My
Okay.
guess would be no.
So neither of you have seen Frozen.
No.
I've seen the trailers.
Okay. It's a new Disney film. Animated, quite good actually. It's quite good. It's getting great reviews. It's doing.
Is it a
well.
musical?
Yes,
It
it
is a
is
musical.
very a musical. It is so a musical that they probably don't have to write maybe just 1 or 2 more songs to take it to Broadway.
Is that likely to happen?
Which, I think that's the idea.
Oh.
They actually wrote it to do that. And what's funny is, you know who wrote the songs?
Cyndi Lauper.
No, she's the Kinky Boots songstress.
You need boots in the snow.
Frozen was written by a husband and wife team. The songs were written by a husband and wife team. The husband wrote the songs for Book of Mormon. And
weird.
before that for Avenue Q.
What's that?
Avenue Q is a kind of a off-color puppet show that they did in New York. That got him famous. And it was
Okay.
actually the South Park guys went to see Avenue Q and liked it. It's now in Vegas. You can go see Avenue Q. It's basically Muppets behaving badly and singing songs while behaving badly. So the South Park guys went to see Avenue Q, afterwards went back to meet, the crew or whatever, and ended up meeting the composers, and we love your stuff. Later, they started talking about collaborating, and that led to the Book of Mormon.
So was he-
apparently the Book of Mormon led to Frozen.
What, was he just writing the music or the lyrics also?
For which?
For any of them?
Well, for I don't know. On Book of Mormon, I think that Trey and Matt wrote the lyrics.
Right.
He just wrote the music and kind of conceived the songs. For Frozen, it's apparently he and his
Husband
wife.
and wife, yeah.
So his
Okay.
wife, I guess, is the lyricist in this case. But they're catchy songs. I mean, they're good songs.
And more wholesome than the ones in the Book of Mormon, I imagine.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Significantly. Probably because of the difference in the lyricists.
So is it about Canada?
Yeah, and who's
No,
Frozen?
It's about a magical land. It's about a kingdom, like a Norwegian sort of kingdom, reindeer, stuff, people in mittens. It's about people in mittens, mostly.
Okay.
Sounds like Canada.
It's sort of like Robin Hood Men in Tights, except it's frozen people in mittens. Is the subtitle.
Okay.
But it deals with supernatural so it got me thinking. You know how sometimes things get me thinking?
Yeah, like Beyonce at the health club.
Yeah, kind of like that. So this got me thinking because there are very few family films anymore, or even big films that are popular films that aren't supernatural in some regard. There are very few perfectly naturalistic films anymore because it's not interesting. We want superheroes, we want gods, Norse gods. We want people that can do magic. So whether it's Harry Potter or Spider-Man, like in the top 10 movies of all time, only one of them doesn't have supernatural in it. And you know what that is? Do you know what that one is? Toy Story 3. Unless you consider talking toys supernatural, but that's not the premise.
Is that natural, though, for toys to talk?
No, it's not natural.
Oh, okay.
It's anti-natural, but I don't know that it's supernatural.
Supernatural.
Right.
Or supernatural.
Okay. So back to Frozen. Okay. So Frozen, what I've noticed, though, is that how magic is portrayed in movies has changed over the years and in pop culture in general, in that there used to be scary witches. Do you remember scary witches?
Yeah, like Sleeping Beauties, Snow White.
Yeah, bad people with supernatural powers that did bad things.
Right.
And for the most part, especially for kids' movies, those have almost vanished.
Is that partly, though, because of comic book superheroes essentially have superpowers, but they're used for good?
But they're also supervillains that quite often have superpowers.
Yeah.
Classically.
But they're not usually magic.
No,
there's
not.
A couple that have magic stuff to them,
Yeah.
but for the most part, it's science or radiation or whatever.
Gamma rays,
or
radioactive spiders,
the yellow
came from a
rays of
different
the sun,
planet.
right. But there's not magic. But does it kind of cast this idea that special powers are good rather than inherently bad?
Possibly, yeah. What strikes me is, because then you say, okay, well, who's the villain? And in Frozen, you know who the villain is?
No.
It's an industrialist. It's a guy from another kingdom who wants to come and do an exploitative business deal with this little kingdom. Because the kingdom...
It's America, in other words.
It's basically, it's white Europeans.
It's the big business.
Yeah. It's colonialization.
Yeah.
So what has become... If you go back to Pocahontas, Disney's version of Pocahontas, it was this guy wants to exploit, he's evil, the natives are natural and earth-loving.
We've romanticized
the noble savage.
Right.
So it strikes me that in most of these movies now, the only evil that's allowed is the evil of oppression and prejudice. That the only really evil, the only true evil is looking down on others.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems like, going back 100, 200 years in storytelling is like a complete crazy, which also, we talked about the movie Paranorman. Remember when we talked about the movie Paranorman? Have you ever seen Paranorman?
No.
Okay, do you see movies?
I see movies.
Okay, but not
generally
animated movies?
not animated.
He also probably doesn't
movies.
go to Disneyland by himself.
No.
Well, let him answer that question.
Yeah.
You don't like Disneyland by yourself?
I don't. I'm sorry.
So who's normal and who's abnormal here?
Yeah.
Who's paranormal? Paranorman, to me, exemplifies what has gone wrong. Because I think many of these movies, the way they're looking at magic is both modern and postmodern at the same time, and it's very confusing. It's modern in the sense that we're basically saying, as a culture, this isn't real. There's no such thing as magic. It's just for fairy tales. But postmodern in the sense that you can't say that it's evil. There is no.
Well, they're using it as a metaphor. It illustrates the point that differences aren't bad.
Right. So even X-Men. I mean, the whole point of X-Men is that...
I saw that, by the way.
All right, good. Which one? So it's
a few of them.
Four of
a few of them.
5 of them.
Yeah, I forget
don't
which
know how
ones,
many.
but
the point of
I saw the most
X-Men
recent one too.
is that there are teenagers, kids that are different, and society is prejudiced against them. They have special powers, so we need to collect them together.
And the message is
keep them
always
safe.
It's always the same. It's people fear what they don't know,
Right.
or they don't understand.
Is that
Da-da-da.
why is that the only thing we can agree on that's worth telling stories about?
I don't know, but if X-Men were real, I don't think I would fear them because I don't understand them. I'd kind of fear the idea that
Because they could melt your face.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems
I'm
more
with you.
scary.
Yeah, I mean, there's some people I know really well, and I fear them because I know them really well.
Really? Like who?
Don't look at me.
So it isn't. I think the idea that all prejudice is a result of ignorance is not true. I think it can
Right.
be true, but I
Yeah,
don't think it's
right.
always true. I think some prejudice is just partly because.
And here's the other
we're evil.
message, though. All evil is a result of oppression.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and you see
Very
this,
postmodern idea.
compare Wizard of Oz to Wicked, the musical that's a prequel to Wizard of Oz. Have you ever seen Wicked? Did you ever see that
No.
musical? Okay.
No.
Musical? See
Yeah,
Wicked?
yeah.
You saw Wicked? Okay. What do you find out in Wicked? Because in Wizard of Oz, you had the good witch, you had the bad witch. Okay? The wicked witch of the West and and good witch Glinda. Glinda, who saves them. Oh, you killed my sister. She's evil. So Wicked tells the backstory. She was kind of, I don't know, Latvian. Wicked tells the backstory of, well, how did the wicked get wicked?
Right.
And what you discover is that the wicked witch became wicked because she was different.
Because she was green.
Oh, yes.
Because she was green.
Tough childhood.
Yes, and
Yeah.
it was her childhood, and so people made fun of her.
As
and
Kermit said, it ain't easy being green.
absolutely.
There you go.
And so I'm watching this, and what you also find out is that Glenda, the good witch, is actually a jerk.
She's a bully.
Yeah, she's blonde, she's white, she's beautiful, she's accepted, she's in the in crowd.
She's a mean girl.
Yes. And so the message of Wicked seems to be, and as I'm watching this, I can't help but think, okay, so let me get this straight. We've got the blonde, white-bread, stupid girl. So she's like from the suburbs or from Texas. You know, she's like she's the Christian cheerleader, right, that you hate, right? Is that? But then you've got the green girl. The Wicked Witch, the future Wicked Witch, is intellectual. She wears glasses. She has kind of a big nose. She's got black hair. You know, I say, okay, so are you actually like? Is this because the authors were Jewish and they lived in a world where they were looked down on or looked up to these Protestant white kids and said, we want to be like them? Is this actually like an anti-Semitic thing that you've built into, this is what made the Wicked Witch of the West? Because
Whoa.
she was oppressed. Yeah.
I don't know. That's a lot of reading into, but you may be right.
Have you heard me read into Beyonce? It's
Did you see Oz, the
great and powerful.
Great and
Yeah,
Powerful?
that was just stupid.
But it was something similar, though, wasn't it? You're kind of sympathetic toward the Wicked Witch?
Yes, because she
her
was.
sister manipulated her
Yeah.
into becoming evil,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so no one is actually evil.
So
Evil is always a result of people being mean.
this reminds me.
So if we would just be nice to each other, there would be no evil.
This reminds me
the world.
of Batman. Which one was it? The Dark Knight. Remember
Yeah.
the Dark Knight movie?
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan's movie with the Joker?
Yeah.
So I saw an interview with Christopher Nolan, who wrote and directed the film. And if you remember the movie, there's no backstory to the Joker. Every time somebody asks him, or he talks about how did he get the scars on his face, he gives him he fabricates some story.
Oh, really?
And so somebody asked him, Christopher Nolan, why didn't you give us the backstory on how the Joker became the Joker?
Yeah.
And I thought his response was really interesting and very insightful, actually, to the biblical understanding of evil. What he said was that for him, the Joker was supposed to represent chaos and just random, bizarre evil.
Okay.
And he said, if I told you the backstory on where he came from, then you would understand him. And some of his personification of chaos would be taken away, and you might even sympathize with him.
Right.
And he's not to be sympathized with. He's just supposed to be overcome. So
Interesting.
A lot of people ask, well, why don't we get the full backstory in Scripture to the origins of evil, right? You just have this good world, and then suddenly the serpent shows up.
Right.
But where did he come from? And it's never really explained anywhere in the biblical text. And I think, this is speculation on my part, but I think part of the reason is God doesn't want us to sympathize with evil. He just wants us to overcome it.
Right.
And the Bible is really about his plan of overcoming what's broken. So much of these contemporary stories that are based on old stories of good and evil, they want to go back and explain where did the evil come from so that you'll sympathize with it and you'll understand.
Right.
And that's obviously, it's not terrible to walk a mile in someone's shoes and understand why they are the way they are, but to a degree it makes the world less black and white. It makes it more, well, there's no real good or bad. It's just all point of view.
Relative.
It's all point of view.
And it's your narrative.
Right.
It's, what narrative did you grow up in? Oh, you grew up in a narrative that says those people are bad. If you understood them, you'd realize they're not.
Yeah. And to a degree, that's a good thing to do.
It is not a innately bad thing.
But when it makes you think there's no absolute evil or no absolute good.
And what it strikes me in lots of these kids' movies is that the message is there is no such thing as external evil. There is no evil outside of the human heart. The only evil is what's inside the human heart that makes you look down on another person. Which basically is throwing away the Judeo-Christian narrative. To say there is no evil agency outside the human heart in the world is profoundly unchristian. Okay, and so we have things like Wicked, because Wicked is basically going back to The Wizard of Oz and revising it to make it, kind of...
Well, isn't that what freaks a lot of people out about revisionist history? They go back into American history and they go, well, let's look at it from multiple angles, and suddenly it's not as cut
Everyone
and dry.
turns out to be gay. Yeah, that's another thing.
In American history,
Yeah. He wrote this nice letter to a friend of his, and so they were...
Anyway. Is that your next book?
It should be. That would sell.
Go back in history.
He's Canadian, so he can say that about
an
outsiders. American history?
Sure.
Okay, tell us about ourselves.
Yeah.
What do you see when you look at us? Another revisionist thing like Wicked, actually almost identical, was...
come on, you can do it.
The Grinch. The Grinch Who Saved Christmas, the movie.
With Jim Carrey.
With Jim Carrey, because you get his backstory.
And he's also green.
And he was also teased in school. And that's why. See, he's not evil.
No.
He was just oppressed by the white majority.
Of whose?
Who are all white.
Right.
And they look down on him because he's green.
Are you sure they're all white?
Almost. They might have had a black one in there.
Were there any black who's?
There might have been one black who.
Or Asian who's? If they were Asian who's, their last name could have been Who.
Yeah.
Like Hu Jintao.
Yeah.
Right?
I didn't think about that.
Huh.
That's really
point.
Interesting. But it's the exact same thing as Wicked is, okay, here's the villain. We'll tell you why the villain isn't evil, just oppressed.
And you think there's an inherent danger in explaining that evil or why people might be
I'm just curious about the radical change in the narrative. You know, in that the narrative we have now is that there is no such thing as evil. There is only people that do bad things because people have done bad things to them.
Well, I think part of the
probably white people.
The practical reason why that narrative is becoming so popular is we are in a more pluralistic society.
Yeah.
There's a lot of diversity. And you go back and look at India for the last 3,000 years, it's been postmodern. And partly because a lot of Westerners don't realize
it's postmodern for 3,000 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Was it ever modern?
It isn't now more, but,
but how can
you're muddying the waters here.
Oh, sorry.
The reason is a lot of Westerners don't realize this, but India is actually a very, very diverse culture with dozens of different...
Because there's so many gods.
That's part of it. There's dozens of different language groups and ethnic groups and family groups and customs and religions and all that. And to create some kind of stability, they eventually develop a philosophical system that basically says, you're okay, I'm okay, everyone's okay. And
except for the untouchables.
Well, but they have their place. And the way you overcome being untouchable is by accepting your station in life and being reincarnated in the next one in a better way. Okay. So it creates stability. And therefore, when you walk down the street in like Mumbai, you'll see a shrine around a tree perhaps, and they'll have all these different Hindu deities represented around, and there's Jesus right in there with them, you know, and other... Because they just say, okay, let's incorporate. Let's make everyone okay. Christianity's not bad. Islam's not bad. Hinduism's not bad. They're all just fine because it creates peace. It creates
Right.
stability.
Right.
The West could avoid that for a long time because it was fairly monolithic.
Right.
It was Christian, period. And anything outside of us was bad.
Monolithically monotheistic.
Exactly. But now you look at our culture and
mouthful.
and it is very, very diverse with different cultures,
Right.
religions. And so suddenly we're having to figure out, how do we all get along? How do we create stability? So what's being injected into the culture then is a narrative that says it's all okay. Difference is fine. Let's not judge one
No
another.
one is innately evil
Right.
or innately less than.
Except the ones who won't tolerate.
Except the
everyone
oppressor.
else. And so I think it serves a very practical role in stabilizing our culture and economy.
Yeah.
Because I have to bring that in because everyone now thinks I'm a Marxist.
And I think, I think too, we've narrowed the pantheon of virtues from the Judeo-Christian tradition and from even the Greek tradition, and all that's left is tolerance.
Right.
So if you're going to, make some art, what can you talk about? It's got to be tolerance.
Right. There's not a whole lot of.
there's not
and
a lot left
I
that we
think
all
I mentioned
agree
this
on.
before, but the screenwriting teacher Robert McKee said the biggest, and he's like the top screenwriting guru in Hollywood. He's not a Christian. He's not religious at all. But he says the biggest problem facing storytellers today is a lack of common values, because
Sure.
you have to have shared values to tell a story. If your audience doesn't all agree that something is right or something is wrong, you can't tell a story about it.
Right.
And so the field of available values for storytellers is shrinking.
Sure.
Radically, because we don't have shared values anymore. And so what we can come up with is be nice to people.
That's the only thing that's left.
Don't-
And it's kind of prosaic. I mean,
Don't look down.
honestly, tolerance, it's like, okay.
Yeah,
But,
stop looking down on people. But just the way that manifests itself. And also in storytelling, moving from a Christian worldview to a post-Christian worldview. And this is why I think Paranorman is such an interesting film, because if you didn't see it, I'll summarize it for you. It's a great film. It's a stop-motion film made by Leica in Portland, I think, the company funded by the Nike guy. Do you know how that happened, actually? Because it used to be Will Vinton Studios.
Is it Phil Cook?
I think you
Phil
said
Knight.
you
Phil
shared
Knight.
this
Yeah,
before.
yeah. Will Vinton Studios did the California Raisins, the animated raisins
Right.
back in the 80s, and
yeah.
Will Vinton was the king of claymation. He actually coined the term claymation. Was Will Vinton came up with that term? I think he TM'd it. He registered it, but he wasn't making any money. His company was going out of business. One of the guy's lead animators working for him was the son of Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, who said, "Hey, Dad, this thing's going to fall apart. What do you think? What if we bought it and tried to turn it into something?" And so Phil Knight came in, bought the company. They kicked out Will Vinton, changed the name to Leica, the Russian space dog, and started making movies. And so they made Coraline was the first one, and then Paranorman was the second one. So Paranorman is a story set in like Salem, Massachusetts, except they don't call it Salem, Massachusetts, but it's a town known for its witch trials.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
Not in the time
Not
of the movie.
current, no.
Right.
And so like Salem, Massachusetts, it's now a town that's almost themed to witches as a tourist attraction because that's their heritage. And there's there's a boy there who can see ghosts. There's a boy who can see ghosts. So we've got a supernatural worldview.
I see dead people.
Yes. We've got a supernatural worldview. There are ghosts. One boy can see and talk to ghosts. He finds out that is actually a gift in his family line because there's a curse. There is a curse that a girl was tried and hung as a witch. And she put a curse on the Quakers that did that to her.
So she was a witch.
Hang on. Hang on. So there's supposedly a curse. Well, this is the legend. It's legendary. And the curse is that on a certain night each year, someone has to read a storybook at the point where the witch was killed, the place where the witch was killed. If they fail to read this story at this place on this night, the 7 or 8 Quakers that convicted her of witchcraft will rise from their graves as zombies and attack the town.
Sounds terrifying.
And so it happens. The 7 Quakers rise and start attacking the
And they're
town.
actually called Quakers?
Yeah.
They're not like Puritans or Pilgrims or something. They're Quakers? They're that specific?
I don't remember.
All right, whatever.
Maybe they're Puritans. But anyway, they're dressed like pilgrims. They're dressed like the Quaker Oats guy.
Yeah.
And so they show up as zombies, and it looks like they're attacking the town. And like, whoa! And everyone has to figure out, how do we stop them? This is crazy. Well, we got to find the witch. We have to find the evil witch and tell her to stop it. They find out that the Quakers, when they finally try to talk to these zombies, they just want to apologize. They're not trying to hurt anyone. They want to say they're sorry for convicting the girl of witchcraft.
They're not trying to eat their brains.
Even though they were right. Because she was a witch, because she put spells on them that actually worked.
But
so why are they sorry?
they're sorry because it's not wrong to be a witch.
Yes, because she just had special powers.
Sure.
She was like an X-Man.
Yeah.
She had special powers, and she wouldn't have used them for evil if she hadn't been oppressed by the white Christians. But because she was oppressed by the white Christians who were prejudiced because she was different, like the Grinch and like the Wicked Witch of the West in the new version.
Was she green? No.
No, she was actually a cute little girl. She was like 6 years old when they hung her.
Oh.
Like, just to make you feel
It's
for her.
very morbid. This whole story is disturbing.
But I'm just watching it and like, I'm like, wait, so they were right. So she was a witch. Wait.
But they shouldn't have killed her for it.
But they shouldn't, what? So their sin was what? So, wait, what? So witchcraft good, Christians bad for saying witchcraft was bad. I mean, that's where we've come to. It's like witchcraft, because witchcraft, it's like we talked about with Wicca.
Sure.
You know, it's earth love. It's if you could get powers from the earth, if you're kind to the earth. And I think she was Wiccan, this little girl. She was like, a magical Wiccan creature.
Proto-Wiccan.
She was proto-Wiccan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a great word.
So
I don't know if it is one, but yeah.
So I'm thinking of Google's unofficial motto, which is don't be
harm.
No, don't be evil.
Yeah.
But no one really agrees on what's evil anymore.
Prejudice.
Google's evil.
I think Google's motto came out of a lot of coders really hated Microsoft because they felt Microsoft was evil. Microsoft was actually called the evil empire. And what they did that was considered evil. So evil is sort of in quotes in the Google, handbook.
What they should have said is don't be Microsoft.
Yeah, basically don't be Microsoft. And what Microsoft did, they were anti-competitive.
Right.
They tried to drive competitors out of business and were actually pretty successful at doing it. So I honestly think that's what the Google founders meant when they said that, is we're not going to be anti-competitive and we're not going to discourage other people from coming up with good ideas, which Bill Gates always did, even though we now praise him as a saint because his wife talked him into giving away all his money, which he wasn't using anyway. So now he's a saint.
Yeah.
But he destroyed
but back
careers of
to the original
thousands of
point
people.
is if you ask anybody, hey, do you support evil? They're going to, of course not.
Evil.
But then when you ask them what is evil, that's where everything breaks down.
Yeah, and I think more and more if you say, do you support evil? It's like, that's an outdated concept.
I remember how the people freaked out when George W. Bush referred to the axis of evil.
Axis of evil. I think it's just because he said it with that weird accent of his, so everything kind of sounded like.
Which wasn't that written by Michael Gerson? Was that his speech that he wrote?
Yeah, I don't know if Gerson wrote that one, but
I
it
don't
could
know
have been.
who that is. Was he?
Michael Gerson, a Wheaton grad.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And,
Anyway,
I think it would if Bush hadn't grown up in Texas, I think that would have gone over better if it had been said with a northern accent.
But wasn't the whole point a lot of the rhetoric that came out after 9/11 was this is evil, they're evil doers, there's an axis of evil. Yeah. And some people kind of go, this was evil, what happened? But we may need to understand it from their point of view because, there's...
Right.
And
that would shape your response.
Right. But that kind of nuance wasn't really, it wasn't the time for that because people were reeling from what had happened.
People wanted somebody's butt to get kicked.
Some people were saying, well, look, after all this postmodern kind of relativism and multi-ethnicity and all this stuff in the culture, 9/11 was going to bring good and evil back to the forefront of our conscience.
Right.
But it really didn't.
Well, I think psychotherapy has kind of taken that place. Like, we don't talk about people being, I don't know, sinful. We say they're dysfunctional, right? It's the human is machine sort of metaphor. Or we say you're sociopathic. But words like evil do kind of have this archaic ring. Yeah. And a lot of people just don't buy into the concept.
And if you do bad things, it's true. Even in therapy very often, if you do bad things, it's because you've been a victim yourself.
We'll get back to the root of it. You weren't held enough as a child. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Because someone at this table
Witchcraft. I'm going to take the spiritual high ground here
Go
and
for it.
pretend that the reason I haven't seen
'Cause-
or read any
yes.
Harry Potter is just because I'm more spiritual.
Because you are the only one sitting on that side of the table that did not go trick or treating as Lord Voldemort.
You mean celebrate Satan's birthday?
Bill, we
Halloween?
got to put the picture up.
Yeah. So we'll put the picture up if you're watching.
Oh,
You were gonna get
I've
me
seen that picture.
in big
It's
trouble.
terrifying.
Okay, Harry Potter is interesting, and I would describe it as both Christian and post-Christian, like simultaneously.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Well, now that's being talking on both sides of your mouth, isn't
Thank
it?
you. No, I think it's confused. I think Harry Potter is confused.
Why?
And confusing, and I think that's why many conservative parents react negatively to it. Because it has messages that I think the thing people react to the most is the notion that it's in the contemporary world. So it's this world. It's not Narnia.
Yeah.
It's not Paralandra. It's
not Middle Earth.
It's not
Well,
Middle Earth.
And Rowling isn't a Christian apologist. So it doesn't get the C.S. Lewis Tolkien
and
pass.
there's that.
Yeah.
It's London, modern day London, and there are witches performing witchcraft, and some of them are good.
Right.
And that for most parents, that's like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Right there. I can't send that message to my kids. Now, if it was in another world, if it was a parallel, but when you have a world where you have a church and a witch standing next to the church, because there's churches in modern London. I don't know if you knew this. There's
Yeah,
still a couple.
there are.
Most of them have been turned into health clubs, but there's still a couple churches in modern London. And in Harry Potter, you could have a witch on a broom go right by one, but you can't have in Narnia.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't show up riding on Aslan in Narnia
Right.
because he's already there metaphorically.
Okay.
Are you with me?
Barely, Phil. I just think you're making.
I'm with you. I don't know where you're going, but I'm
Yeah.
with you.
But that's why it upset people. That's why it upset
So
people.
if it had been entirely a fantasy world, it would not
I think
have upset
that would have been
people.
a little bit different. And just the notion of it came out.
I'm gonna disagree.
It came out shortly after the very strong rise in Halloween resistance in the evangelical community, which was primarily the 1980s, kind of focused on the family. James Dobson ascendancy created a very strong backlash to a lot of things. Because when I was a kid in very conservative Muscatine, Iowa, going to a very conservative church, nobody had a problem with Halloween. There were no one. I'd never heard of a harvest festival. There were no Halloween alternatives.
That's wild because we trick or treated, very conservative, evangelical background. We trick or treated until I was like about 5 or 6, and then all of a sudden, I think my parents saw a video or something, and it was over. Harvest parties from there on in. And to this day, I sit home at Halloween and hand out healthy snacks and Jack Chick tracks. No, that's a lie.
We need to get Jack Chick on the show. I'm still alive.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think to go a little bit more nuanced than your argument, Phil, I think the reason why people reacted so strongly, some people negatively, to Harry Potter, is because the main characters are children. And what I mean by not like Narnia, there was obviously children in Narnia, but those children were. Those children were not witches.
They were not practicing witchcraft.
Right. So the
children practicing witchcraft.
And I think it freaked people out because the books were written for children, the movies are for children, and the main characters identify with the children, or the children identify with the main characters, and some parents thinking that my children are now going to be drawn into witchcraft because I think that was the potency. It wasn't that it's set in a real world context.
I think that's part of it.
I think it's more that it was the children.
I think that's part of it.
But I got to defend this a little bit.
Hang on, I'm not done yet, though.
Okay.
I just want to make so post-Christian in the sense that something that Christianity says is wrong is not considered wrong. Witchcraft, being called a witch. Christian, though, in the sense that evil is external.
Yes.
That evil exists. It's not just, we never find out, Voldemort was teased when he was a kid.
Yeah.
So that's why, there's a little of that with Tom Riddle, actually, that you do find that out.
Yeah, but not. Well,
evil
he was a Muggle blood, right? He was part.
Yeah.
Whatever. I forget the storyline.
Because Harry's father teased him. Didn't we find that out near the end?
But there was something more than
but
there's no sympathy really
it's
for
bigger
Voldemort.
than that. And you've got the Dementors, and you've got like the external evil. You've got really kind of scary stuff that's outside. Whereas in Frozen, the only evil in the story is a greedy capitalist who has no powers. So evil is entirely the choices that normal people make that are bad.
I'd say that's half Christian, though, right? Because in the Christian account, it's there's original sin, there's internal evil and external.
Yes.
So
okay, now go.
A couple of things.
Okay.
Number one.
Are we having fun?
It is certainly and absolutely true that, especially in the Old Testament, divination, witchcraft, those kinds of things are forbidden.
Yeah.
And they're wrong.
Right.
And they're evil.
Wearing black pointy hats is explicitly forbidden in Leviticus.
The question
riding brooms.
The question that needs to be asked is why? Why is witchcraft wrong?
Because it's playing with evil powers.
No.
All right, Scott. Why is witchcraft wrong?
The reason these things are wrong, divination, astrology, witchcraft, is because it was an attempt to control God.
Yeah.
This is what King Saul was guilty of when he went to the witch at Endor.
Right.
And called up the spirit of Samuel. He was afraid of what was going on in the battle, and he wanted to control the outcome.
Right.
So the divination and the practices of these other cultures around Israel were all about controlling deities and trying to gain control over these. And what the God of Israel said was, number one, you can't control me. Don't try to control me.
Right.
And the way I want you to live is in loving relationship with me, trusting me for the outcomes that I've promised to you.
Right.
So it was built on trust and love rather than control and fear. So witchcraft at its heart is about taking control over powers so that I am dominant over them. It's very much Adam and Eve in the garden again saying, I want to be like God. I want to have control.
But it also leads you into very bad places.
Well, what I would argue is witchcraft is well practiced and very much alive in the evangelical church. We just don't do it with black pointy hats and frog legs and cauldrons because
We're in so much trouble now.
we still try to control God.
But that's not witchcraft.
Yes, it is.
That's just trying to control God. Not all trying to control God is witchcraft.
But that's why witchcraft is evil.
Yes, it's a subset. Witchcraft is a subset of trying to control God.
It is a certain...
Drew, help me out here.
I don't know if you're trying to control God. I think you're circumventing God, right?
Right.
Which is...
You're trying to control the world.
Yeah, you're saying, well, God, I'm not going to... Like you said, I think control is at the heart of it, right? So God, I can't control. He's too big. He's too scary. He's got his own thing that he's going to do. So I'm going to go and find some powers that I can manipulate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And as far as what enrages the Lord God about that, I don't know. Is it, probably dangerous for his creation because, like you said, you go to some dark places.
Right.
It's a form of idolatry as well. And it's sort of consorting with other
And this
gods.
goes into the heart. Why were the Jews forbidden to speak God's proper name? It wasn't
because
just...
they could never pronounce it because they had no stinking vowels.
It was because in the ancient world, you see Jesus do this.
I'd like to buy a vowel.
When Jesus confronts the demon-possessed man, he demands to know what the demon's name is. And remember, the demon responds, "We are legion, for we are many." It was the belief in the ancient world was that if you could know the name of a deity or power, you could control it.
Yeah.
The reason why the Jews were forbidden from speaking God's name is because to speak the name of a god or deity was to try to gain control over him. So God said, you will not speak my name because you cannot control me, nor should you attempt to control me. So the question I would pose to those of us in the evangelical world is, how do we seek control of God? Sometimes we do this through our morality, right? If I just do the right things, then God is in my debt and he has to do what I want. Or I'm going to control God through my generosity or my giving. Or I'm going to control God by, if I recite this scripture enough, or if I say the prayer of Jabez and he's going to expand my territory. All of that is divination. That's witchcraft. Witchcraft, as we typically think about it, was just one manifestation of it.
I think you're redefining witchcraft.
Are many ways in which it's...
Tell him, Drew.
I'm saying...
I'm literally caught in the middle here.
Witchcraft is one manifestation of that impulse, which is still alive and active in humans.
Yeah, metaphorically, you're right.
Yes.
It is like witchcraft. I mean, technically, obviously, it isn't, brewing up frogs in a kettle or something. But
that was just an ancient form of seeking control. We have more contemporary ways of doing it.
Right, but we also still have that.
Yes.
There still is witchcraft.
But I'm saying...
I don't think we should confuse it with...
I'm saying both are bad.
Yeah.
Both are bad.
Yeah.
So to the evangelical goes, oh, those kids, they go trick or treating, or they read Harry Potter, or they what, and they don't look at the bigger piece of, well, how is this true of my life also?
Right.
How am I? That's where I think we start looking at the speck in someone else's eye rather than the plank in our own.
Right. Okay. So you think you're fine with Harry Potter because
I think it actually does tell a very good story about good and evil.
Okay.
And I think I can communicate well enough with my children to explain that the witchcraft portions are a storytelling device, and to understand that we don't do that.
Right. Okay. Are you a Harry Potter fan?
I'm not. And
what are you a fan of? Because we've established that you don't see movies or
I see
apparently
movies,
read books.
but these are kids' movies.
Yeah,
and I have a 2-year-old.
You have a child.
Yeah,
I have a 2-year-old.
His son has to get older.
Exactly.
You'll be
so, and these are
stuff.
questions that my wife and I are going to wrestle with, right?
You sure are. So what's it going to be for Halloween?
After this?
Harvest Festival?
Man, after this.
Or dress up your baby as Voldemort?
We dressed him up. He was a dinosaur this year. But
from what period of
how
Cretaceous?
How old on Earth did he come from?
6,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, 6,000 years ago.
Good. Oh boy.
No, we don't want to go there.
We're in a mess of trouble now.
Yeah.
We can do one more short story, I think. What did we learn? How do you go to movies with your kids? I mean, do you think it's important to like debrief afterwards? If
sometimes, not always.
Movies or sermons. Everyone's preaching.
My daughter, my family likes the music from Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and so we sing it a lot, and we sang it when our kids were growing up.
Yep, it's big in our house too.
My daughter just noticed the horrid theology in that musical, and she's 16, and it was like, and we were singing one of the songs because it's always bothered me. It honestly bothers me to like go through the whole musical with my kids because the theology is so horrid. But she said, wait a minute. And she just turned to me in the car and said, so they're saying that any dream would do. I mean, that's the basic theme. Any dream will do. If you have a dream, follow it's the same stupid American dream stuff, just drawn out of a biblical story instead of out of a desire to win the gold medal in Sunday school. Figure skating. Never mind.
But that's a really good point, because when it's a purely non-Christian story or a fairy tale or whatever, Harry Potter, and something doesn't conform to the Christian worldview, you can easily say, well, yeah, sure, it's the world, it's Disney, it's whoever. When it's a biblical story or it's a Christian production,
so I realized
that makes me more worried.
That moment, she had grown up thinking that was a Christian musical.
That's why I'm much more worried about the Christian media that my kids consume than I am the secular media.
Yeah.
There's only 2 channels that I block in our television. Yeah. Well, they don't have access to anything that's under. But there's 2 stations I block, and it's the Disney Channel and it's the Christian Channel.
TBN?
I'm not going to name names.
He just died.
Sorry.
And
I know. We don't want to pile on.
The reason isn't because I think everything on that network is bad, but I know if my kids stumble on that channel, they're going to think this is Christian. And yet some of the things that are being said or spoken or taught there are decidedly, in my view, not biblical or not Christian. And I don't want them to be confused, whereas when they turn on a Harry Potter movie, there's no confusion that this is a Christian idea.
But what about, Walt Disney in the 1960s, one of the last expansions of Disneyland. I know things about the Walt Disney Company. Did you know that?
I'm learning right now.
Okay. Was the Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion. And so he did a special on his Sunday night show introducing those 2 concepts and walking people through the models. Again, and I have a copy of this on DVD. So he's walking them through the ideas for the Haunted Mansion, and they actually, some of the ideas that they didn't end up doing were really dark and occultic. And so he's kind of, just, and we'll do one of these and it'll be like this, and you realize he doesn't believe any of this is real.
Right.
He's completely a modernist. There's no supernatural anything. Maybe there's a God in a deistic sense, but there's no,
Therefore, it's okay to have fun with all this.
Yeah, ghosts, demons, all of that is just story fodder because none of it is real.
Right.
So we're not talking about real things. That's kind of changed. There's more. I mean, the rise of Wicca, would be an example of We want that stuff to be real again, and we're going to pursue it as if it is. So it's interesting to see the storytellers, where you go back to the modernist sense, where we can tell stories about any of that stuff because none of it's real.
It's just silly.
And so it doesn't matter. We're not leading anyone towards playing with anything. It'd be like saying, yeah, we're going to tell kids a story about crack cocaine, because it's not real, and they could never actually get involved with crack cocaine. That could never happen. And that's the way we treated witchcraft. And I think that's one of the concerns of Harry Potter is that, are we taking it seriously?
Yeah.
See, and I think when it comes to these stories, I don't see them maybe causing a belief in magic.
Yeah.
But what I see in post-Christian Europe is maybe the best place to look because it is, fairly post-Christian, and yet
Hence the name.
Exactly, post-Christian Europe. There is widespread belief in fortune telling, in all kinds of new agey ideas.
Yeah.
And the secularist thesis is sort of that, okay, well, we'll dispense with religion and we'll all be very rational and not believe in anything supernatural.
Right.
But whenever you lose, a Christian faith in a culture, there's a void. There's a spiritual void. And that dry secularity doesn't attract anyone. And so something rushes in to fill the void. And I think that's what we're seeing increasingly in America.
The core human instinct is control because we're afraid and we're going to latch on to something that gives us a sense of control. And when modernity and science doesn't provide it, we will turn to all of this stuff.
Do you know where a Christian worldview shows up the most in Hollywood films?
I know you're going to tell us.
Horror movies.
Oh, sure.
Horror
Oh,
movies.
yeah, with the cross and the...
Yes, because you've got evil is external.
Mm-hmm.
There's evil out there. It's under your bed. It's in your basement. It's in your attic. It could be anywhere. It's in the woods. It's in the... So there's none of this, the evil thing was teased as a child. And once we talk to the evil thing and give him a cookie, he'll be a friendly evil
Freddy
thing.
Krueger just needs a friend.
He needs a hug.
Yeah.
That's all he needs.
He's at a bad fire. And
horror movies actually believe the Bible. Basically, that there is evil out there, and quite often it takes religious form. It is a demon. It is, it's ghosts from beyond. There are priests involved.
so kids should be watching horror movies. Is that what you're saying?
I know this.
It's God's corner of Hollywood.
There you go.
I know this isn't going to go over well with perhaps many in our audience. I think evangelicals, for the most part, have a pretty good understanding that, okay, demons, witchcraft, the occult, all that stuff is bad and to be avoided, and it takes you into dark things. I think where we're a little bit sloppy is Paul talks about how the powers and authorities in the heavenly realms, when he uses the words power and authorities, he's not speaking about angels and demons floating around just in space somewhere. He's talking about the systems of the world that also are under control of demonic forces or antichrist forces. And that's where evangelical theology falls short. Because we can say, kids, don't mess around with that Ouija board, or don't go to that fortune teller, or don't do astrology because it's demonic. But do we recognize that demonic forces can also be embedded in cultural systems, in economic systems, in political systems?
So you're saying Hollywood is demonic?
I'm saying that
we've been suspecting it all along.
I'm saying we need to be more nuanced in the way... there's that great line from The Usual Suspects that the greatest trick the devil ever pulled off was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Right.
I prefer The Godfather, where he says you keep your friends close and your enemies even closer. I think in some ways the evangelical church is so close to our enemy we don't even see him anymore. It's easy to point to Harry Potter or other occultic kind of things and go, that's bad, we're not going to go near that. But yet we are so embedded with some systems and ways of operating in our own Christian lives and in our attempts at controlling God, and we don't think those things are darkness.
Wow.
And that's the real hidden danger.
All because of the white man. what it comes down to.
The industrialist.
Have you ever heard of the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose?
Yes.
I have not seen it.
I have seen that one.
Yeah. It's interesting because it was made by a guy named Scott Derrickson, who is a Biola grad, a Christian filmmaker, and he made an Exorcist movie. And
he made Hellraiser, too.
Did he really?
Yep.
The guy with the pins in his head? Pinhead?
No.
Yeah.
That was like 15 years earlier.
I'll bet you mine.
I remember sneaking into that theater.
I am going to bet you money, and you're going to pay me. Because I think Emily Rose was his first film. But anyway, 'cause I've met him.
Yeah, no.
Met a
He came and
dude.
spoke at Fuller when I was out there.
Someone will have the answer on Facebook.
Anyway,
Yeah.
when he was asked, okay, you're a Christian, why are you making horror movies? Why did you make a horror movie? And he said, frankly, because it's the only intersection of my interest and the world's interest. I want to tell stories about God, about supernatural, and that's the only place the world will let me do that, is in a horror movie.
Fascinating.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So when are you going to
His
make your...
next movie was War of the Worlds.
You need
and
to
it
make a
bombed.
horror movie, Phil.
Yeah, I should make a horror movie. Yeah, that's
with-
a great
with
idea.
puppets.
A puppet horror movie.
Yeah.
Would that make it more horrible, horrific, or less?
I think it'd be very creepy. It's like that Chucky
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Remember Chucky, the doll?
Yeah.
They always use kids in horror movies, you know. If there's something creepy about that.
To take something that's innocent and pure and make it evil, that's like the
Like
word, right?
That's the worst.
vegetables.
Yeah.
If you could take like
Rotten vegetables.
the innocence of a tomato and
Rotten tomatoes.
all right, what am I singing about? I have more sleep, so hopefully this will go better than last week. I apologize. for last
Frozen,
week.
witches, industrialists.
Frozen witches,
And the Pope.
industrialists.
Pope.
Great.
Batman
Now-
Pope.
The Batman Pope.
Now I'm confused. Oh, the Pope's sneaking out like Batman. It's hard not to look down at that man, 'cause he's helping people, giving them alms. We don't know what they are, but if he sticks one in your palm, then tell me what it is. And if you can use it to buy a burger at Chick-fil-A, hey, 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 hey. And you can make a horror movie if you want to talk about God to the world, 'cause that's the only thing they understand about God, is that he has a worldview that allows for some really funny plots about terrible things that are under your bed. Because atheism, as we know, makes boring films that no one wants to see. I think my last rhyme was about 5 minutes ago, and I apologize to all the songwriters out there. I'm going to wrap it up now. So, we think it's pretty cool. I hope you don't think I'm a fool, but I'm doing my best right here with my friend Skye and Drew. He's here too. Okay, see you next week. Bye.